All right, so today I wanted to talk about a very interesting tweet from Dave Smith here saying, imagine holding the exact same views as your teachers, friends, politician, Hollywood, the entire media, every major corporation, and still honestly believe that you're opposing the system. Or a better way of putting it, I think, would be you're a part of the resistance, right? Um, and it's a very good point for many reasons. And it's especially relevant nowadays because you have a lot of these people that hold such obvious or such insane amounts of cognitive dissonance. It's really not even funny. And I mean, there's many examples of that, but I think the worst thing nowadays is the people that support the lockdowns, right? um, in that there's many things, right? That they're worried about the gap between the rich and the poor. You see, they're so worried about it, but they support the largest wealth transfer in history from the poor and the middle class to the rich, right? At the end of the day, they don't actually care about the gap between the rich and the poor. They only, like most leftists, again, they only care about the gap between the rich and the poor when they can use it to benefit themselves, right? That, socialists on average are not motivated to help the poor, right? They're not. They're more motivated to take from the rich. And this is the problem with these people is because their motives are they're so backwards and so contradictory. That's why things never work out, right? Again, if socialists actually cared about the poor more than they wanted to take from the rich, then they would be calling for their own area to where they can get together and pool resources and collectively pay for stuff, right? But they never do that, right? They only want to do socialism when it can mean taking from people that are making more than them, right? Um, but again, the main point here is very simple too, in that you have these people that again they've never spent 5 seconds in their whole life taking a step back and thinking, could I be wrong on this? Right? The lockdowns is the best example of that. Like these people that support lockdowns. And the reason I know that too is I've never heard someone come up with a coherent argument for lockdowns. I must have had hundreds of people respond to me over the last year about this stuff, and I've never seen one good argument. And by that, I mean someone it's actually well thought out. Because again, if your idea is, oh, we're going to lock down so we can save lives, well, that's not an argument, right? You're, you clearly still haven't thought things through because, again, if more people are going to die indirectly from lockdowns than you're going to save from lockdowns, then they make no sense. Again, if you're going to put 1 million people out of work, again, like this is the thing, like Canada, we have about 1 million people put out of work because of lockdowns. Again, like how many people are you willing to put out of work to save a life? Is it 10? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? Again, I've never seen a good argument from these people because they need to be honest with people. And the reason I don't think they do that is that number one, they've never actually thought it through, right? They're just repeating what they hear in the mainstream media. Um, and number two, if they actually did that, it wouldn't make them look as good, right? This is the same reason the socialists are never honest with people, right? If they were, wouldn't make them look as good. Because again, if like just imagine if those lockdown supporters said, yeah, we want to lock down, and if that means we put, 10,000 people or 100,000 people out of work just to save one life, then it's worth it. But again, the average person would hear that and think you're crazy, right? And then if you need to put one person out of work, well, maybe, right? But whenever you get in the double digits, no. And the other problem too when it comes to these two is that, like I said, is that locking down is killing more people than it's saving. Even if you want to argue that locking down is saving a significant amount of people, we already know that more people are dying when you account for the increase in drug overdose, in suicide, in missed cancer screenings. We already know that those things are killing more people. So you're not saving lives. And even if you were, it still wouldn't make your argument still wouldn't make sense because they've never actually showed us their cost benefit analysis, right? They've never done it. Now, they may fire back with the same argument, but again, the burden of proof isn't on the anti-lockdown side. The burden of proof is on the lockdown side, right? You don't get to take away people's basic rights and freedoms and say flip it around and say, oh yeah, the burden's on you guys. Prove that you deserve your freedoms. No, it's not how it works. And if you want that to be how it works, well then a country with basic rights and freedoms isn't for you, right? There's plenty of countries that have no basic rights and freedoms that will gladly let you in. So again, that's I think the worst part about it. But again, this is the same thing when it comes to everything else too. It's the people that the people that claim to hate capitalism while they're telling us how much they hate capitalism in their they're nicely the house that if it's too hot air conditioner flips on, if it's too cold heater flips on. They're doing it on their phone, on their app, right? Like the amount of capitalism that goes into these people's these people doing these things is not even funny. But yet they still hate capitalism, right? Like it's just it's pure and utter insanity because again, if we had never had capitalism, we'd still be living like we were at least 50 years ago, probably 70, 80 years ago, right? Like most major inventions were made by private individuals. In fact, like can we name one major invention that was done by the government? Like no. I mean, look at Elon Musk with the SpaceX thing. He put I think it would cost the government. I don't know what the exact number was, but it would cost the government significantly more money. It was like 10 times more money, and it would take them like 2 or 3 times more time to go to the moon than it was for Elon Musk, right? To go into space, right? So again, not only is the private sector better at doing this stuff, they can do it faster and for cheaper, right? So this is the same thing for the people that say, oh, we need free healthcare because the poor need healthcare. Well, yeah, it doesn't change anything. The healthcare only becomes more expensive. And at the end of the day, the system as a whole suffers because um, I mean, there's many reasons, but at the end of the day, the system becomes more expensive. If there was an incentive for people to stay healthy, if there was an incentive for doctors to keep people healthy, then the healthcare as a whole would be way cheaper. The problem is that there's no incentive for people to be healthy. There's no incentive for doctors to keep people healthy because they make, again, like what, I mean, I'm sure there is, but from a basic perspective, the goal of the doctor is to see the most patients, at least in Canada, right? So again, the system's completely backwards, but again, these people support that stuff, right? Like these people support that stuff. So again, at the end of the day, the problem isn't necessarily, I don't think these people necessarily think that they're, they have their malevolence or, bad intent or anything. I think these people are just genuinely people that really don't have a clue what they're talking about. They've been fed so much garbage from the mainstream media and from public schools and from universities that again they've heard the lie so many times that they believe it, right? And again, like there's no debate on that either. Like there is no way you can claim to care about the gap between the rich and the poor and support lockdowns. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Right? There's no questions about that. It's not a debatable issue. And it's only getting worse too. Now, I think part of the reason why these people support that too, is that a lot of free stuff has been handed out to the poor. And this is the thing they don't understand too, is that when you like if a UBI were implemented, it wouldn't hurt the rich. Like it wouldn't hurt the rich. This is the other thing that these people don't seem to understand too, is that when massive amounts of money printing is done, when massive amounts of inflation hit an economy, it benefits the rich the most and hurts the poor the most because um, when there's inflation, I mean, there's many reasons for this, but I think one of the main ones is asset prices are going to go up, meaning people that own properties, people that own businesses, people that own big corporations, that's the prices of those are going to go through the roof. So it just makes the rich richer. So this is the thing about these people is that again they haven't thought things through at all, right? And it's one like I say, it's incredibly ironic too that these people they just blindly spout what they see, from popular culture or whatever you want to call it, and yet they think they're part of the resistance. It's very funny how the Overton window is completely changed over the last 10 or 20 years ago. Like I'm not old enough, but most people are probably old enough to remember when it was the left that was the anti, at least on average, was the anti-establishment crowd, like under George Bush, right? It was, and even in the late 90s, like the punk rock, like it was all anti the system and all this kind of stuff. Now I mean, there wasn't really punk rock, but now if there was, it would all be supporting the system, right? It's very funny. So again, like I said, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get. So like I said, check out those links and stay tuned for more.